I'm not a person who is easily scared. I'm a tough one. And I'm not afraid to jump into things that others would probably stay away from. Since childhood, I lived in a violent neighborhood. Every day of survival was a feat. Maybe that's why I don't really know what fear is. People look at me with a mix of admiration and disbelief. Partly because I never back down from anything. Partly because they don't understand how I can survive in a world full of danger. I live a normal life like everyone else. If not to say simple. During the day I work as a porter in a large warehouse. The work is hard, but I like the feeling of using my muscles. At night I come home. One drink, a few beers. I fall asleep. One day I met an old friend. He wasn't much different from me, but he looked thinner after many years. He invited me for a drink, and in his drunken stupor, he told me about a job he was doing. Night duty at a cemetery. I burst out laughing. I asked him why he chose that weird job, but he just smirked. He told me the pay was $200 a night, and the job was nothing but sitting around waiting for the morning. He insisted that the job was easy, and if I wanted to earn some extra income, he would introduce me to the boss. $200 a night. That was a lot of money for me, especially since the job sounded so easy. I had no reason to refuse, especially since I didn't believe in nonsense like ghosts. He arranged a meeting for me with the boss, and within a few days I had the new job. Night duty at an ancient cemetery. The locals whispered about it. They said there were countless horror stories. I didn't care. To me, they were just baseless rumors. Stories people made to scare cowards. I was ready to prove that nothing could make me tremble. The cemetery sat on the outskirts of the city, in the middle of a dense forest. I remembered my old friend's words, that no one dared to come here at night. I figured the fewer people, the less trouble. My first night started like any other. I arrived at the cemetery after the sun had set. A cold wind blew through the trees. It made creepy sounds. I didn't pay much attention. My heavy footsteps echoed on the path leading to the main area. I sat down on the chair, next to the small hut where I would be on duty. I felt the absolute silence surrounding me. Instead of making me uneasy, the silence made me comfortable. I thought about the horror stories. It had to be a joke for thrill seekers. The night drifted by without anything happening. I sat there yawning, wondering if all nights would be like this. Around 2 in the morning, my eyelids started to feel heavy. Then a strange noise came from deep inside the cemetery. I opened my eyes wide and listened. It sounded like footsteps dragging on the ground, slow and heavy. My heart started pounding, not from fear, but from excitement. Finally, some action. I stood up, picked up the flashlight, and walked toward the noise. Darkness surrounded everything. I kept walking, a bit hesitantly. The closer I got, the clearer the noise became, as if someone or something was approaching me. The light from my flashlight swept across old graves. A sudden cold wind blew past and made my skin crawl. I didn't stop. Under the dim light, I saw a shadowy figure standing among the graves. I took another step. The beam hit the figure full on. In that moment, I realized the rumors were not entirely made up. My second day at the cemetery started normally. Nothing to write about. I woke up late after a long night and went back to my usual porter job. When I got home, I found a thick envelope on the door. It had no return address. It was simply addressed to me in a scrawl. Curious, I opened it and took out a handwritten sheet. After reading the first lines, I realized these were rules I had to follow during my night shift at the cemetery. A chill ran down my spine as I read the strange rules. General rules. 1. Don't go too far. Always stay within the range of streetlights or your flashlight. The deep darkness of the cemetery hides terrifying mysteries. 2. Don't touch anything. From ancient tombstones to strange objects that may appear at night. Touching them may stir up things you don't want. 3. Don't talk to yourself. Your voice may attract unwanted creatures. 4. Don't look into the eyes of anything that moves. Eyes may be a door to another world. 5. Don't believe everything you hear. Strange noises and whispers and moans may be just the wind playing tricks, or an invitation from the dark. Special rules. 1. Don't read any writing on a tombstone. Curses and dark secrets can be revealed through ancient inscriptions. 2. Don't light a fire. Flames can attract creatures that fear sunlight. 3. Don't sing or whistle. Your noise can disturb the peace of the cemetery. 4. Don't look at the clock. Time in the cemetery can pass strangely. 5. Don't leave the cemetery before dawn. Darkness is when supernatural forces are most active. I smiled wryly and wondered who sent me these rules. It had to be a prank by the old hands to scare newbies like me. But the more I thought about it, the more something felt off. The words seemed to whisper into my mind. They planted a doubt that wasn't easy to shake. I decided to bring the paper. And I started my second night shift. The cemetery was quiet that night, but unease began to creep into my mind. The strange rules kept me from relaxing like before. I checked my surroundings more often. I paid attention to every little sound. The wind pushed through the trees. The leaves rustled like someone whispering. I held the flashlight tight in my hand. Its beam made me feel a little safer. But every time I aimed the light away, the darkness behind me seemed to come alive. As if it was trying to swallow the light, I walked slowly between the rows of graves. The beam moved back and forth. It lit every patch of ground and every old tombstone. The rules kept lingering in my head. I couldn't shake them. Don't go too far. Don't touch anything. Don't talk to yourself. Suddenly I heard a strange noise, like a scratching sound coming from an ancient grave nearby. My heart pounded. I refused to let fear take over. I stepped closer to the grave. I aimed the light straight at the cold stone surface. I saw a long, fresh scratch on the headstone, as if someone had just raked it with their fingernails. I stopped. My hand shook around the flashlight. The warning from the first rule came to mind. Before I could do anything, the scratching sound came again. Closer this time, clearer. I raised my head. For a brief moment, I caught a glimpse of a dark figure sliding behind the grave. My heart felt like it would jump out of my chest. I shined the light toward the shadow. I saw nothing but pitch blackness. Silence returned, but I no longer felt safe. I backed away. I tried not to let panic take over. The fourth rule said not to look anything that moves in the eye. I couldn't see clearly, but I could feel eyes on me from deep in the darkness of the cemetery. From that moment, I knew these rules were no joke. Tuesday night, I walked into the cemetery with a stranger feeling than ever. Each tree shadow and each grave seemed to hide something darker than before. The cold of the night didn't just numb my skin. It made my soul heavy. The dim streetlights threw thin streaks of light on the ground. They could not dispel the dense darkness covering every corner. The letter with its rules sat in my pocket, a silent reminder that I was playing a dangerous game. The wind whistled across the graves. It echoed like moans, like the stew of forgotten souls. Every step I took echoed. The sound rode the wind. It became a gloomy symphony of death. I gripped the flashlight tighter. I remembered the warning not to stray too far from the light. Tonight the light felt weak. The streetlights were dim. The darkness seemed thicker than ever. I tried to ignore it and continued patrolling the cemetery. The feeling of being watched didn't leave me. Every time I turned around, there was only darkness and silence waiting. Suddenly, I heard another sound. Not the wind, not rustling leaves. It was slow and heavy footsteps, like someone trudging through dry leaves and gravel. I stopped and listened. My heart thumped in my chest. The footsteps stopped. Then a whisper surfaced from the darkness. "Don't look into the eyes of anything that moves." I tried to control my breathing. I told myself it was only my imagination. Then a shadowy figure emerged from the darkness. It moved toward me. I remembered the rule. Don't look into the eyes of anything that moves. Curiosity won. I raised my head and looked straight into its pitch-black eyes. There was no life in them. In an instant, everything around me distorted. The ground under my feet seemed to draw down into an invisible abyss. I felt a force pulling me. The whispers grew clearer. They came from everywhere. 1,000 voices at once. "You have violated the rules. You will pay the price." I flinched. I tried to escape the force holding me. I tried to run. My feet felt tied to the ground. I couldn't lift them. The light from my flashlight faded. Darkness swallowed everything. I felt myself plunge into another world, a place where death and fear ruled all. A scream rang out from the depths of the dark. A breath like ice rushed into my mind. Everything around me twisted. Horrific images rose before my eyes. Bodies torn apart. Blood ran in streams. Faces warped with pain and horror. They all surged toward me, ready to swallow me into the depths of hell. I realized I could not escape this darkness. I could not escape those rules. And the worst part was knowing this was only the beginning. After that night, I returned home in panic and exhaustion. My mind reeled with images and sounds from the cemetery. Dark shadows, threatening whispers from the dark. The fear clung to me. When I reached my small place, I collapsed into the living room chair. My eyes stayed on the letter with the rules I had ignored. I no longer dared to brush them off. Each line felt carved into my mind. It reminded me this was not a joke. The rules were not guidance. They were survival. The next day, as I prepared to return to the cemetery, I got ready more carefully than ever. I checked my flashlight. I packed a spare flashlight and a sharp knife. I knew these things might be useless against whatever haunted that place. Something is better than nothing. At least they gave me a scrap of security. When night fell, and I stepped through the iron gates again, I felt a change in the air. Everything was still quiet as usual. I no longer felt the vague comfort I once had. Every little noise made me alert. Every cold gust kept me on edge. I kept myself within the lamplight. I repeated every rule in my head. While patrolling, I refused to look into the eyes of moving shapes. I tried to ignore the whispers and the footsteps that seemed to follow me. I kept my distance from ancient tombstones. I did not read a single word carved on them. Anything strange made me wary. I did not approach. Around midnight, a cold wind kicked up. The rustling leaves mixed with the buzz of insects. It made a strange music of the night. For a moment, I heard a giggle far off, like a child's laughter. It came from a dark corner of the cemetery that the lamplight could not reach. I stopped and listened. The sound faded quickly. I remembered the rule. Don't believe everything you hear. My heart pounded. I squeezed the flashlight. Its weak light seemed unable to push back the darkness that covered everything. I backed away to get clear of the sound. The laughter still echoed in my mind. It reminded me that the peace here was only a cover for the horrors underneath. I kept patrolling. I tried to ignore the strange noises. Sometimes I felt stares from the dark, as if 1,000 eyes watched each step I took. I didn't look back. I didn't try to find the source of those gazes. With every step I made sure to stay in the light and away from the corners that swallowed it. The night dragged on. Hour by hour I felt myself slowly swallowed by fear. I realized the cemetery held more than darkness. It held invisible entities always ready to devour anyone who broke the rules. When a hint of dawn began to show, I felt a small relief. I left the cemetery with a heavy heart. I didn't dare look back. The rules were no longer meaningless words. They had become a guide for my survival. I knew that if I wanted to survive the nights to come, I had to be more careful. I had to obey every rule. Even so, I knew caution could not guarantee safety. In the darkness of the cemetery, there were things the rules could not protect me from. They were waiting, ready to strike when I least expected it. That night the air felt even heavier. Everything was eerily silent. I sat in the watchtower. The flashlight on the table cast light over the letter of rules I had to follow. Curiosity gnawed at me. My eyes strayed to the words on an old tombstone nearby. They were not like the words I had seen before. Ancient and unsettling. I felt an invisible pull that drew me closer. Don't read any words on the tombstone. The special rule was clear. I broke it. I walked to the stone. I couldn't stop myself. I read the strange inscriptions carved on it. As the last sounds left my mouth, a cold wind swept through. Everything around me fell into a dark and eerie silence. The ground under my feet began to shake. Horrific sounds like wailing and moaning. Screams like the damned. They echoed through the night. I tried to back away. My feet felt nailed to the ground. My eyes were stuck on the tombstone. A crack split the face of the stone. Something began to rise from within. From the crack's black rotting arms slowly reached out. They clung to the surface. They struggled to escape from another world. Each finger and each sharp nail scraped across the stone. The sound screeched like nails across a chalkboard. A pale face appeared. It was no longer human. Empty eyes. A mouth gaping as if in endless pain. It was not the face of the living. It was an entity from the dead. It had come back for revenge. I tried to back away. My body didn't obey. More rotting arms pushed up from the ground. From the surrounding graves, they pulled me toward the tombstone. Each arm clung to my body. Nails dug into my flesh. They dragged me slowly and surely. I screamed and struggled. The more I fought, the tighter they gripped. Pain spread through me as sharp nails tore at my skin. Red muscle showed beneath. Blood began to flow and dyed the ground red. The arms did not stop. They dragged me into the deep darkness where my worst nightmares were only the beginning. Something began to crawl over me. Horrific, shapeless entities. Lumps of rotten flesh. They slid into my mouth, into my nose. I felt them invade my body. Bit by bit, they destroyed every cell and every tissue. I felt the decay happen while I was still alive. Each layer of flesh tore apart. Each organ felt chewed. My screams caught in my throat as a foul slime flooded my mouth and filled my lungs. I couldn't breathe. My heart hammered so fast it felt ready to explode. Then it stopped. I still felt everything. The pain, the fear, the utter helplessness. I knew I had made the biggest mistake of my life. That night I had broken a special rule. Now I was paying with my soul. Those entities dragged me into an endless darkness. There was no life. There was no death. Only eternal pain. Asterisk, I opened my eyes. The cemetery was gone. I was in a different place. Darkness all around, cold, full of creepy whispers. I knew I was pulled into another world. A world I should never have set foot in. No more graves or headstones. Instead, an empty field. Cracked ground. Dead trees. The sky above was pitch black. No stars. No moon. A faint light from nowhere cast long shadows. Everything here was distorted and twisted, as if reality had been bent into a nightmare. Dead trees twisted like monsters crawling across the earth. A cold wind blew. It carried the stench of decay and death. I tried to walk, but every step was hard. The ground was soft, as if I was stepping on corpses. My feet sank little by little. It felt like invisible hands were gripping my ankles. They didn't want me to move. Shapes moved in the dark. They were not people. They were horrifying entities. Slimy forms with no clear outline. They crawled across the ground. They left trails of black blood and slick fluid. When I drew close, they turned toward me with empty eyes, black and soulless. From their mouths, high-pitched screeches echoed across the field. Like invitations to come closer, whispers grew clearer. They echoed in my mind. Come here. We have waited for you for a long time. You cannot escape. I was surrounded by living nightmares. I could not escape. My body locked with fear and despair. Each step weighed a ton. As if I dragged a giant burden dot in the distance, I saw an old wooden door. It stood alone in the middle of the empty field. It looked like the only way out. I knew it could hide something worse. Before I could reach it, the entities closed in. They pressed me into a dark corner of the field. A larger entity approached, tall and terrifying. Its body was covered in debris, broken bones and rotting flesh held together by black slime. It bent down to face me, its empty eyes fixed on me as if piercing my soul. From its mouth, a stream of black blood dripped onto the ground dot. It raised a hand, a large arm with long, sharp nails. It touched my chest. Cold spread through my entire body. A sharp pain pierced my heart as the arm passed straight through my chest without resistance. I screamed, but the sound choked in my throat. I watched its arm pass through me and pull out red strings of blood and nerve. As the arm withdrew, I felt like my entire soul was being pulled out with it. My body fell. I was still conscious. I was no longer myself, only a fragment of who I used to be, trapped in an eternal nightmare. Before my eyes closed, I saw the wooden door swing open. From the darkness behind it, Other arms reached out. They pulled me into the deepest part of this place. There was no light. There was no hope. Only endless torture. I knew I had broken the rules. Now I had to suffer the worst consequences. This world would not spare me. I would be imprisoned here in darkness. I realized I was being dragged through a long corridor. Dark and foul. The walls were covered with dried blood and human flesh. It formed a picture beyond horror. With every pull, I sank deeper into this hell. Ahead, flickering lights appeared. A red glow like fire from the pit. It lit the space ahead. I entered a large room. I found myself standing inside a scene beyond any horror movie. Now I lived in it. I felt every pain and every fear. In the middle of the room, a giant cauldron boiled with thick black liquid. It smelled like decay and death. Horrible demons circled it. Their bodies were distorted. Patches of flesh rotted on their bones. Their eyes were red and wild. They used iron hooks to pull pieces of living flesh from corpses hanging from the ceiling. They dropped the meat into the cauldron. I saw the bodies hanging by sharp hooks driven through their ribs. Blood still oozed from the wounds. Drop by drop it hit the floor. The bodies were not quiet. They writhed in extreme pain. Their screams filled the room. It sounded like the ground of hell had found a voice. The demons didn't stop there. They tore raw flesh from the victims and shoved it into their mouths. They chewed savagely. Flesh and blood splattered everywhere. The crunch of teeth on bone mixed with the miserable screams of the unfortunate. It created a soundtrack of torture and death. In a corner I saw an even worse scene. A huge demon with a body covered in black hair sat beside a stone table. On the table lay a woman bound tight. A rag stuffed her mouth so she could not scream. The demon used a long, sharp scalpel. It slowly opened the woman's abdomen. Bright red veins and pulsing organs slid into view. It did not kill her at once. It dissected her bit by bit. It removed each organ carefully like a skilled butcher. Every touch of the blade made her thrash. Her eyes widened with terror. No sound came out. Only broken moans. I wanted to look away. I wanted to run. My body would not obey. I was forced to stand there and take in every horrifying detail. Each scene stabbed into my mind. It made me part of this horror. In the distance, another doorway gaped. It led to an even darker passage. Before I could move, cold, bony hands grabbed my shoulders from behind. I was yanked backward and thrown into the center of the room. The demons turned and stared with glowing red eyes. A demon with huge wings and sharp black horns strode toward me. It bent close and took a deep breath. Then it laughed. The sound shook the room. It reached out and gripped my neck. It lifted me off the ground and I choked. "You think you can escape?" It roared. "You entered my world. Now you will be part of it forever." I struggled. It did not matter. I felt its sharp nails pierce my skin. Pain spread through me. Blood leaked from the wounds. It dripped onto the floor. It mixed with the blood of the others. It threw me down. I curled in my own blood. I knew there was no way out. This was the price for breaking the rules. A never-ending nightmare. I would have to witness and endure the worst pain. Laughter rolled around me. It echoed in my head. It reminded me I had entered hell, and I would never leave. They dragged me across the room toward a giant iron hook hanging from the ceiling. I felt the cold surface of the floor as my body scraped along it. Blood from my wounds mixed with other pools of blood. It formed a deep red river that carried me to the end of suffering. A tall demon with skin as black as coal approached. It bent low. Its red eyes burned into me. I felt its hot, foul breath on my face. Its giant hand clamped my shoulder and hauled me up. I hung limp like a doll. The iron hook bit into my back. It cut between my ribs and locked in the bone. The pain was indescribable. I screamed. Only weak, broken sounds came out. My whole body trembled. Blood dripped from the wound. The room filled with the laughter of demons. I hung in the air like meat waiting to be cut. The demons stared at me. Their eyes shone with hunger. They laughed. Their laughter echoed through the room and made me shiver with pain. Another demon with a thin body and black ruined wings glided closer. It pulled a long, sharp knife from the dark. The blade shone in the red light of the flames. It moved the knife in front of my eyes. The metal was cold. It felt like 1,000 needles pushing into my skin. Then it cut. The blade slid through my flesh. Skin tore open. Blood sprayed in streams. I felt each cut, each burst of pain. I could do nothing but scream. The other demons surged in. They used their hands to rip chunks of flesh from my body. They chewed like beasts starved for days. The sound of tearing meat, the grind of teeth, it all blended into a horror I could hardly believe. I was still alive inside this pain. Despair flooded me. I felt my humanity slipping away. I was treated like a worthless piece of flesh, ripped apart and eaten alive. Each slash and each bite carved deep into my soul. It made me part of an eternal nightmare. When I thought it couldn't get worse, darkness wrapped around my mind. Not death, just a total loss of self. Everything dimmed. My screams faded. Only the swallowing horror remained. I had become part of this hell. I hung there like a living decoration, a trophy for torment. Nothing was left but pain and fear. I was imprisoned in darkness, waiting to disappear. In a daze, they pulled me off the iron hook. I fell into a fiery pit. The cackle of demons, the groans of damned souls, the wet tearing of flesh. It all echoed around me. The darkness was overwhelming. The dim light from the fire under my feet showed me the hell I had fallen into. The walls were built from human bones. They were carved with strange symbols. Each mark seemed to twitch in the dim light. Bloody hands reached from the walls. They trembled and clawed at the air, as if to drag anyone closer. Asterisk pools of black blood boiled on the ground. They opened like mouths of hell. They tried to swallow everything. Strange creatures crawled across the surface. Not quite human, not quite demon. They ate each other. They gnawed every bone and gut. They laughed like mad. In the distance, I saw a giant machine made of thousands of human parts. It worked like a factory from hell. It crushed unlucky souls in giant gears. Streams of fresh blood flowed down into the rivers of black sludge at my feet. Screams and moans and pitiful pleas drowned beneath the roar of the machine. Iron cages hung high above. Living people were trapped inside. Twisted beyond recognition, they were forced to watch the horror below. No escape, no chance to deny their fate. Every time they screamed in despair, the demons laughed with delight. They poured boiling oil onto them. The screams turned sharper than before. I tried to move. My body ached with a heavy weight. Invisible chains seemed to bind me. Each step hurt. Heat pulsed from rivers of molten filth that crossed the path. My heart slammed in my chest. I had almost no strength left to fight the fear. A sudden explosion tore the world apart. A shock wave ripped through hell. The ground cracked under my feet. Flames roared up. They burned everything. The giant machine shattered. Gears flew in all directions. They crushed everything they hit. Demons were hurled into the air. Their screams vanished in the roar of the blast. The wall of bones collapsed. Bloody hands were crushed under rock. Iron cages fell and slammed into the ground. The souls inside were smashed to pieces by the force dot. The shock spread like a hellish earthquake. It made everything chaotic and barren. Streams of black blood flooded the ground. They drowned everything in sight. There was nothing but chaos and destruction. It felt like the whole hell was coming down in a storm of rage. I was thrown high. I fell into a bottomless black hole. I was sucked into a vortex of chaos. The explosion rang on in my head, like the final bell for the end of everything. I couldn't scream. I couldn't breathe. I could only feel the horror and the despair of a last moment. Then everything fell into darkness. I knew nothing more. Darkness wrapped me. A feeling of nothing and despair swallowed everything. No more pain. No more groans. No more thunder of explosions. Only an endless pit that swept me along with the wreckage of hell. In that blackness, a faint light appeared far away. At first I thought it was an illusion, a tiny glimmer of hope in a fading mind. The light grew, stronger and clearer, like a fire burning in the dark. From the ruins, the light spread through the space. It lit every shadowed corner. Warmth washed through my body, as if I were submerged in a sea of light. Pain and fear began to fall away. In that light, I saw a tall figure. The figure stepped out of the blast. A golden cross shone in his hand. It cast a bright halo. The glow pushed away the darkness. Demons and monsters cowered and screamed and faded into nothing. I tried to see clearly. My eyes were blinded by the brightness. Through the glare, I recognized the face. It was the Savior. He had come to free the souls imprisoned in hell. God walked in silence. Only light filled the places he passed. With each step, the hideous creatures vanished into nothing. The souls that had been tortured for so long began to break free. They turned toward God with a glimmer of hope. He stopped before me. The cross in his hand flared brighter than before. I knelt, not from fear, but from reverence. A deep peace wrapped my soul. God reached out his hand to me. A warm hand, full of compassion and patience. His voice rang without sound, yet I heard it clearly in my mind. You were lost in this hell. Now I will lead you back to the light. An invisible force lifted me from the ground. As if carried by the will of God, the chains that bound me, the pain I had endured, all vanished like smoke. Light covered me. I felt embraced by God's love and forgiveness. I looked around. I saw other souls saved by God. They escaped the iron cages of the machine. Bloody hands shattered and fell away. People stepped into the light. Their cries and moans and screams were replaced with prayer and thanks. The kingdom that had been terror was now empty, except for the light that filled it. The Lord stood in the center like a beacon in a dark sea. He guided the lost back to safety. I felt a great peace, as if all my fears and pains had been washed away. At the same time, I knew this was the beginning of a new journey. The Lord had saved me from hell. The memories of that place would stay with me, a scar that would never fully heal. In that bright light, I prepared myself to move on, to seek redemption, to find complete salvation for my soul. When the light of the cross faded, I felt myself lifted gently, as if floating in zero gravity. A calm wrapped me. No pain, no fear. Every passing instant felt like a long journey that I could never have imagined. When I opened my eyes, I was in a different place. No more dark hell. No more pain and fear. Instead, a beautiful scene, peaceful, full of light. This was heaven, a place I never dared to dream about. Heaven before me was a vast field. Flowers of many colors bloomed bright and fragrant. Petals swayed in a gentle breeze. They formed bands of color that sparkled in warm golden light. The light was not exactly from the sun. It was a gentle light, steady, as if it flowed from the ground and the air. It filled the place with warmth. In the distance, mountains rose high. They were capped with pure white snow. The peaks sparkled in the glow like giant diamonds. At the base of the mountains, clear streams flowed. The water rippled and made soft, pleasant sounds. A symphony of nature. Clouds drifted lazily in the sky. They formed shapes that felt magical and strange. The sun was not too bright. It gave off a soft gold. It covered everything in a warm tone. Not blinding, only peace and serenity. Stars seemed to sparkle even though night had not come. They hung like gems high above. In front of me, a great road made of precious stone stretched toward the horizon. It glittered and shone. The road led to a palace that sparkled with white and yellow pillars. It rose tall and graceful like something out of a fairy tale. The palace looked built from precious materials. Delicate patterns stood out along the stone. Light reflected off every surface. I walked toward the palace. Angels flew around with pure white wings, light and graceful. They moved like gentle streams. Sometimes they beat their wings and a soft music drifted through the air. I saw other spirits too. They smiled bright. They talked together in joy and peace. They wore robes of pure white. The light around them formed halos as soft as clouds. Each face wore a sincere smile and a gentle gaze. Their voices were calm, serene, without a trace of tension or worry. As I neared the palace, I felt warmth and peace flow from it. The large doors opened to welcome me. Gems inlaid in the doors sparkled and formed a beautiful image. Inside stretched a vast space. Paintings filled the walls. Stone statues stood with perfect grace. Decorations glittered. Angels and cheerful spirits greeted me. They led me to a garden inside the palace. Trees and fresh flowers grew from fertile, pure soil. The sweet fragrance of blossoms and fruit filled the air. It created a cozy and pleasant space. Heaven was beyond words. All feelings of pain and fear were gone. It was a realm of absolute peace. Every moment was filled with light and love. Everything here felt perfect. There was no cruelty, no suffering, only eternal peace and happiness. When I looked back, I knew the memories of hell would always be part of me. But this heaven took me into a peace I had never known. Here I would find complete salvation and an eternal rest. The warm feeling of heaven began to fade. A gentle wind swept over me. I felt like I was flying in an unknown space. Light and darkness intertwined. The beautiful images of heaven drifted away. In their place came a hush of pain and cold. When I opened my eyes, I was lying on a familiar bed. The smell of disinfectant and the chill of a hospital wrapped around me. A dim lamp cast soft shadows on the wall. Relief washed through me. I turned my head and saw familiar faces. My parents and my siblings stood around the bed. Their faces were worried. They shone with joy when they saw me awake. Tears rolled down their cheeks. I realized the pain and anxiety they had endured while I was gone. Their warm hugs and soft words brought a security I had not felt in a long time. "You are awake." My mother's voice trembled. It held hope and worry. My father clutched my hand. His face showed a joy beyond words. I could see the fatigue and the hurt in their eyes. Their greatest joy was that I had returned. I opened my mouth to speak. My voice was hoarse and weak. My parents gave me a glass of water. I drank slowly. Each sip felt like a piece of life I had been missing. Even with the joy of returning, I could not forget the images I had seen. The memories of hell. The scenes of horror. The torture still haunted me. Sleep did not come easy. I only wanted to forget. I looked around and knew I had come back to the present. Still a part of me stretched between two worlds. I felt like I stood between two cliffs. On one side, peace and the love of my family. On the other side, nightmares without end. I couldn't explain everything to my family. Their worried eyes and their care gave me strength anyway. I couldn't forget the horrors. I knew this return gave me a chance to heal. It gave me a chance to start again. With each passing day, I felt more at peace. The memories of heaven and hell stayed in my mind. Somewhere inside, I knew I was back with people who love me, people who care for me. And that is the most important thing.